Once again, you already know what it is and you already know where you have reached. This is volume 4 of Hubbard Wrestling Weekly presents HUBBanomics Superstar Profiles, and today, June 7th, 2024, we are going to take it to a whole new level. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been talked about on Clash of the Podcast every Monday night, 6:05 Eastern Standard Time, with myself, Sean Hubbard, and Conrad Cushman. It's been talked about on Everything Pro Wrestling with Derek and Conrad. It's been talked about all over the world. I know you've been waiting on it, and I'm giving it to you right now. 20 minutes or less, career synopsis, current day career synopsis of the one and only, they call him the Learning Tree, Chris Jericho. Now, let me start by saying this, okay? This is just about pro wrestling. Just about pro wrestling. I do not condone any heinous acts, all alleged heinous acts. That is not my business, okay? Not discussing that at all. I'm strictly talking about the pro wrestler Chris Jericho. Now check this out. Let's get right into this thing. Once again, my name is Sean Hubbard. This is HUBBanomics Volume 4, the Chris Jericho episode, right here on Hubbard Wrestling Weekly. A lot of people out there are having a big issue with the Learning Tree gimmick. My guy Derek from Everything Pro Wrestling, Conrad from Everything Pro Wrestling, a lot of our listeners on Clash of the Podcast and Hubbard Wrestling Weekly are like, Sean, what are you talking about? This Learning Tree gimmick is corny. This Learning Tree gimmick is annoying. This Learning Tree gimmick, plain and simple, is hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. Let me take you back in time, okay? 20 minutes or less synopsis on Chris Jericho, the professional wrestler. This guy has reinvented himself so many times, and it has worked more times than not. Let's do a little history lesson. People who have reinvented themselves time and time again, if they've had an opportunity to remain employed, it usually doesn't work. Typically, if you reinvent yourself 2 or 3 times, you end up getting fired from wherever you're working. Chris Jericho has found a way to reinvent himself dozens of times. And for some reason, I can't understand it, but for some reason, Chris Jericho continues to reinvent himself in the best possible way. Let's go down the gamut of Chris Jericho personalities. The Lionheart, historically significant. Y2J, iconic. Then he went from Y2J, the Millennium Man, to the best in the world at what I do. He went heel with it, and it worked. It's real easy. It's low-hanging fruit to talk about how good Chris Jericho was as Y2J, right? But what about how awesome he was as a heel? Does everybody not remember when the guy I consider to be the greatest professional wrestler of all time, the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels, got thrown through the Jeritron 5000 or the Jeritron 7000 or the Jeritron 25,000, whatever he was calling it in that particular time? That feud between Chris Jericho and Shawn Michaels was iconic. Yet another incarnation of the Chris Jericho character. He was able to drop the Millennium thing about 3 or 4 times. It worked every single time, whether it was the first time interrupting The Rock, which was one of the greatest wrestling segments of all time in 1999, whether it was when he went away and came back in 2004, 2005, went away and came back in 2008. Now, I know my colleague Conrad Cushman would say, well, that's the key, Sean. He was able to go away and come back. Well, let's fast forward, like I said, for the benefit of the 20 minutes or less dynamic of Hubbard Wrestling Weekly HUBBanomics. Let's fast forward to AEW. Now, we already know his historically significant, amazing career in World Wrestling Entertainment. Fast forward to his career in AEW. First of all, a pioneering signing for All Elite Wrestling. Dare I say, All Elite Wrestling would not be where it is today if it wasn't for Chris Jericho being one of the key components when it first got started in 2019. Okay? To me, there's no debate. You can debate it if you want to, but Chris Jericho joining AEW in its infancy stage was monumentally important. Okay? He comes out, he wins the inaugural AEW World Heavyweight Championship. Moxley obviously debuted, but he beat Kenny Omega in the first main event for the AEW World Championship. In my opinion, did a tremendous job in pioneering that championship. A tremendous job. From there, he's become several different personalities. He revisited the Lionheart gimmick that he did 20 years earlier, and it worked. He had theme music that the whole crowd, the whole world was singing. Now, let me tell you something about this. How bold, in a good way, can you be as a professional wrestler to have something that worked? We all know Chris Jericho's iconic AEW music, and he veered away from that and started something new, went back to the Lionheart. Then becomes the Ring of Honor World Champion and calls himself the Ocho. Hello? This is hilarious, top tier stuff, man. Top tier. I mean, his continued evolution as a superstar is bar none. I don't think anybody's recreated himself as good as Chris Jericho. The Inner Circle. He made Sammy Guevara a household name. People are always talking about, I'm going to go into this for a few minutes. People are always talking about how Chris Jericho is feeding off of other guys. Oh, Chris Jericho's feeding off of this guy. Chris Jericho's feeding off the other guy. Is it just me, or would Jake Hager have never had a job in AEW if it wasn't for Chris Jericho? Is it just me, or did he not make the career of Sammy Guevara? Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just me when I say that the Chris Jericho MJF feud was absolutely epic. Epic. I am so tired. Again, this is only professional wrestling I'm talking about. I'm not condoning any kind of alleged acts outside the ring. We are strictly talking about wrestling. I am so sick and tired of hearing people talk negatively about Chris Jericho, the performer. What has he done wrong? Let's go back to WWE one more time. Now, before we get into the list, which is one of the most iconic changes from something lame into something amazing, probably in the history of professional wrestling. And I'm going to compare it to something in a minute, and I think you guys will appreciate it. Before we get to the list, like I said, going back all the way to 1999, probably the greatest debut maybe in the history of professional wrestling, when he did the Y2J countdown and interrupted The Rock. Well, we can agree to disagree. I think it's the greatest debut ever. The greatest debut of all time, right? He turns stupid idiot into a catchphrase. He makes the list the hottest thing on WWE television at that time. I'm going to say it again for the people in the back. Chris Jericho made the list the hottest thing in professional wrestling at that time. Bar none. Bigger than Roman Reigns. Think about the time frame now. We're talking about what, 2018? 2018? Bigger than Kevin Owens, who was the Universal Champion. Bigger than Roman Reigns. Bigger than Brock Lesnar. Bigger than Goldberg. Bigger than anybody in the industry at that time. Chris Jericho made the list a household name, made the list must-see television. The term, "you made the list," crowds went nuts. So don't tell me about how Chris Jericho can't make something out of nothing. He's done it time and time again. Do you know why he started using the word stupid idiot? Because before, in the Attitude Era, he was using the term SOB. OUSOB. He would say the full word. You know what SOB stands for. And then I'm sure WWE brass came to him and said, "Hey, listen, we're in the PG era, pal. Can't use those foul language." So he started calling people stupid idiot. And at first, yes, it sounds corny. It sounded stupid. But then it became awesome. Do you think just anybody can make stupid idiot and the list awesome? And let me tell you what the comparison is. I know I told you a couple seconds ago I was going to compare the list and stupid idiot to something else. Well, let me make that comparison right now. I vaguely remember back in, 1997, when a young up-and-coming superstar came back from injury after having an amazing professional wrestling debut at the 1996 Survivor Series. He became the youngest Intercontinental Champion of all time. Like I said, got injured, came back, joined the Nation of Domination, and he had a move. And that move was called the Rock Bottom. But one faithful night, on a Monday Night Raw, if I'm not mistaken, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson stands over his opponent, and instead of administering a regular elbow drop like we've probably seen a million times, he decides that he wants to take off his elbow pad, throw it into the crowd, wave his arms back and forth, run to one rope, jump over the other rope, or jump over the man to the other set of ropes, come back and do what the professional wrestling video game at the time called it, a theatrical elbow. People thought that was the dumbest move in the entire industry. Think about it at the time. Don't think about it during Deadly Games Tournament of 1998. Don't think about it during multiple World Championship matches. Don't think about it at WrestleMania. Don't think about it as the final boss. Think about it in 1997. Late 1997, when he was facing Stone Cold Steve Austin for the Intercontinental Championship. Early 1998, when he was facing Ken Shamrock for the Intercontinental Championship. Elbow with theatrics. It was the dumbest crap any of us had ever seen. And now it's become probably one of the most iconic finishing maneuvers in the history of wrestling. Let me ask you guys a question. Do you think anybody but The Rock would have been able to pull off the people's elbow? I don't. So to bring this conversation back to its point, Chris Jericho makes things work, ladies and gentlemen. And that brings us up to the present day. The learning tree. The learning tree. You know, I didn't like the learning tree at first, but then you know what happened? Then I opened up my eyes and I remembered who Chris Jericho, the professional wrestler, is. Chris Jericho is literally the guy who makes something out of nothing. He's done it millions and millions of times. This learning tree angle is funny. My guy Derek, good friend of mine, EPW every Wednesday night with my tag team partner Conrad Cushman. He hates the learning tree. He says, oh, the learning tree. Why is he talking so loud? Why is he forcing it upon people? It seems staged. It seems stupid. That's the point. He's being a jerk. He's being condescending. He's being a jackass. That's the point. And it's working. Are you seriously going to tell me, ladies and gentlemen, that the learning tree is not funny? It's freaking hilarious. He just told the guy how to scoop chicken dumplings into a bowl. He just told the guy how to raise his own newborn baby. He just told the guy that you need to stop completely at a stop sign. Does a guy need to be taught how to raise his own baby? Does a guy need to be taught how to scoop chicken and dumplings? Does a guy need to be taught how to stop at a stop sign? No, that's the point. That's the point. He's being a condescending jerk. That's the gimmick. Hi, guys. Hi, guys. That's the gimmick. Look, you can love Chris Jericho or hate him. And again, I'm going to say it for the third time. I am talking strictly about professional wrestling. I am not talking about anything outside the world of professional wrestling, any allegations at all. This is strictly professional wrestling. And when you look at things from a strictly professional wrestling standpoint, you have to consider Chris Jericho one of the greatest of all time. And this learning tree gimmick, will it go down as the greatest gimmick in the history of Chris Jericho's career? Not even close. But if there was ever, as I take my leave, and I'll see you on Monday night, 6:05 with Conrad on Clash of the Podcast and the next edition of HUBBanomics. As I take my leave from this episode, I leave you with this. Is there anyone in the history of this business, from a character professional wrestling standpoint, has there ever been a pro wrestler that has made more lemonade out of lemons than Chris Jericho? I think not. My name is Sean Hubbard. This is Hubbard Wrestling Weekly. And this is HUBBanomics, Volume 4. God bless, be encouraged. Evil never prevails. Later.